You are listening to the Marc Guzman Podcast Experience. Before we get started, just a reminder that you can find all of my available rental properties on my website at marcguzman.com. If you own investment property, click on the Owner Services section to see our complete list of services. Thank you to our sponsor for today's episode, East Brother Beer. Located on Canal Boulevard in Point Richmond, East Brother Beer mixes classic brewing styles with precision and modern sensibility to create the perfect Bay Area craft beer. I started this podcast to showcase the various communities I work in and what makes those communities unique. I manage many properties in Richmond, and it is no secret that Richmond's past has cast the city in a negative light. I've had several guests come on in the past, Melinda, McCrary, and Bill Lindsay, whom have played a role in making Richmond a better place to live in over the past decade. Today, our guests are Cici Gordon and Stephanie Medley from the Ryse Center. Located on Macdonald Avenue and 41st Street, the Ryse Center provides the local youth a safe location to learn about the community and the world around them, giving them the tools to shape their own future. For the last 10 years, Ryse has steadily made Richmond a much better place to raise a family. Ryse is a program that everyone in the Bay Area should know about, and today we talk about just some of the many great things the Ryse Center does. Yeah, so thanks for coming on to the podcast, and we're live now?
Yes.
We are live. So Cici, Stephanie, thanks for coming in. I'm excited for this because I operated out of Richmond for like the longest time, selling real estate, and being in real estate, you get to meet a lot of local people, right? And driving through the different neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. And I live in Richmond right now, and so it's always nice to really see new developments and new things, and especially when it comes to youth centers too. So I'm really excited to have you guys here on the show. And so let's get started right into it. How did the two of you get connected with the Ryse Center, and how did the Ryse Center evolve and come about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can start. So I've been at Ryse a little over 5 years now, and I'm from Richmond. So grew up in Richmond, went to Macdonald Valley High School. So I am very local. But
is it pretty crazy to see Macdonald Valley High School how it is now?
It is. It's very crazy. It's like a completely different place now.
The entire remodel is pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love the whole arc at the very entrance that they have.
Yeah. Like, what was it, about 2 years ago, I had walked past and I was like, what is happening? Because it was when they were just tearing stuff down. So now, it's beautiful. I wish I had that. But I was doing work. I was working at Bay Area Legal Aid, and a lot of the work that I focused on was supporting clients that were losing housing. But a lot of those clients were losing housing because of some type of impact from the criminal justice system. And so that kind of sparked me doing more work throughout the county around that area, and some legislation had come down. And so
How many cases do you think they handle, or how many cases do you handle there?
It was a lot. I can't even remember like the amount of people that were losing housing or losing their Section 8. But yeah, a lot. And so in getting in that work and getting more into reentry work, and how our people that are coming home and coming back to our community and their communities that have had some type of impact in the criminal system, figuring out how we can make smoother transitions for them and provide support, I started to notice that there wasn't a focus on young people and how they're coming back to us. And so I really wanted to focus on youth. And my managing attorney at the time was like, well, have you heard of Ryse Center? And even though we were right down the street from each other, I had never heard of Ryse. And they wanted to start a youth justice department. And so I applied for the youth justice director position, got the position, and it created an opportunity to have a more intentional focus on how are we supporting young people, that are involved in the system or have relatives that are involved in the system? How do we support young people with creating alternatives to incarceration? And how can we support them like directly in the community with some more intense supports? And that kind of started me on my journey at Ryse.
Wow. And you touch on a couple of subjects right there that could be a whole podcast episode in itself.
Hey, if you want to talk some more, definitely. Because, I mean, it's a huge thing. And I think especially given the climate of just the community, the country overall, there's some huge opportunities for us to make some serious changes in how we support people that are impacted by the criminal system, and not just those that are in like prison or jail, but also how we're supporting families that are on the outside and have to deal with it. And so I would love to come back and talk more about that.
Yeah. I remember when I was in middle school, we had like a justice class, and basically just walked you through the steps of how the courts work and everything. It was very interesting because it's something you're not really exposed to as a kid, to see a lot of like how it's supposed to work, right? And so it's pretty neat that Ryse has its own justice center to really help kids and the youth like get to know the system better, right?
Yeah, and you know, we work a lot with counties, so like with probation and with the courts and with district attorney and public defender's office, trying to figure out how can this look different in Contra Costa. How can we look at some innovative approaches and how we're working with young people in the system. And so there are a lot of exciting things happening, I think, in Richmond, in West County, and in Contra Costa as a whole.
Okay, so we'll definitely get back to that. I want to talk about that some more.
For sure.
So Cici, how did you get involved with the Ryse?
So I also grew up in Richmond, California. I went when I was younger. I'm only 24, so it wasn't that long, right? When I was younger, I was in a program called Making Waves, and we had an artistic program called Raw Talent, which stood for Richmond Artists with Talent, and it was our kind of hub in which we could talk about trauma and talk about the things that we were experiencing on a daily basis and put it to art and poetry. That organization merged with Ryse, but when they merged with Ryse, I was on my way to college, so I went to UC Santa Cruz and did my 4 years, came back, and as I was getting my master's, I was just visiting Ryse a lot because I was like, I love this space so much, and I was working 4 like odd jobs just at the time, trying to pay for school and do everything, and we had 2 folks at Ryse who were like, Cici, you love Ryse, and we love you, so let's figure out how to get you.
And you were there all the time, right?
Right, I was like, and I'm here all the time. I'm literally at staff development. I was like, I know I'm not supposed to be here, but can I just like stay for a portion of this? And so they gave me the opportunity to be the media arts and culture manager, and so I was finishing my master's degree while starting that position, which was challenging but extremely rewarding, and now I'll make a year in September. So, yeah.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
So obviously the Ryse Center, and before, what was it called?
Raw Talent.
Raw Talent? So this was very impactful on your life.
Definitely.
And that's one thing I feel like it's kind of sad to see, because you see school districts cutting budgets for a lot of after-school programs, and a lot of the youth really have nowhere to go, and it's really hard to find about different places like this. And Ryse has been around for many years already. Yet,
10 years.
10
Our
years.
birthday is in October.
Yeah, so 10 years, and there's still a lot of people that don't know about it. And I know there's so much you can do to get the word out there, and little by little you're growing. And I'm seeing right here the amazing plans that you have here for the future development. But I mean, it's great, it's around, but it's so important for the youth to have a place to go to. And so you were involved with the art. And so what kind of art did you do?
So I have, for the most part of my life, always done poetry. When I started off in Raw Talent, I was super, super shy. And so I would only write and then have my mentor read a lot of it. But through that process and being able to talk about the different traumas that I was dealing with, from gun violence to sexual assault to a ton of things that I couldn't talk about with my family. I had that space to do it in, and so that kind of just began kind of my life and who I am now. And I think it has made me even stronger to be able to be in this position, because media arts and culture encompasses so much, but the way that I kind of live and how I drive at least my portion of the job is through poetry, is through processing grief in this particular way. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, how many youths are currently active with Ryse?
Yeah, so I mean, our member base is about 3,500 plus young people. And on any given day, it kind of depends.
You said 3,500?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, we have had a lot of young people come through Ryse. And so we serve young people ages 13 to 21. And we still sometimes have members that have aged out that come back and they want to be at the center. And so we've supported a lot of young people over the past 10 years. And so on any given day, it just all depends on what's happening at Ryse. It can be between like 50 to 100 young people daily that are coming to Ryse for any types of supports. And just to kind of piggyback on what Cici was saying, Ryse's mission is really to create safe spaces for young people. And Ryse as a safe space means how are we utilizing their creativity in all different aspects. So whether it's poetry, whether it's singing and music, whether it's visual arts, but also looking at other ways that they can be creative. And so it may be creative in how you're organizing or advocating for different things. Mm. And so really looking at all of their strengths, looking at young people in a holistic way. Mm. And so, yeah, we try to support as many young people as we possibly can. And our services are free. And so young folks have like access to so many different things, and so many different people in different industries, so that they can learn and grow. So how many different
programs do you have at the Ryse Center?
So we have a lot of different programs. We have 4 departments, though. So we have our media arts and culture department, which Cici is a part of, which is visual arts, performing arts. You can learn filmmaking. You can learn how to do graffiti, muraling, and things like that.
Beat making workshops.
Beat making, yes. Then we also have our youth organizing, which is focusing on what are those issues in the community that are impacting young people, and how can they organize and advocate for changes or for things to be implemented. Then we also have our community health department, which has a range of services from clinical services. We have 2 therapists on site, so young people can access mental health supports, and it's free. And they don't have to be on Medi-Cal, so they can get those supports. And that's one of the things that Ryse was really grounded in, is how are we providing those supports for young people, whether it's mental health or physical health, food justice, identity groups from Sister Circle, Young Men's Group, our Alphabet group for the LGBT young people and allies that we have there. What else? Then we have our Education and Justice Department, which is everything from working with young people that are impacted by the criminal system to providing SAT, ACT prep, providing tutoring in math, history, science, providing providing college access. So we do Northern California college tours. We also do a huge Southern Cal college tour in the spring. We do economic justice, and within the Education and Justice Department, we also do a lot of policy advocacy work with the young people. And so, did I forget anything? I think I got everything. So we have all these different programs, and probably some more that I didn't really get a chance to touch on. But, you know, it's not just about how are we providing like direct supports for young people. That's a huge part. But because we're a youth-driven organization, it's also about like no policy or investment or practice about young people without young people. And so how are we creating not just safe spaces at Ryse, but even when we're out in the community or working with partners or working with systems folks like the education system or the criminal system, how do we bring youth voice into all of that work that we do?
Yeah, so you're giving the youth a voice and teaching them how to go out into the real world and give them that voice. Or not give them that voice, but how to express their voice.
Right, and they already have the voice, but sometimes I think as adults, we try to tamper that voice. Yeah. And, one thing that always rings out to me, we did a listening campaign to talk to young people about the trauma and coping that they go through. And young people know that they necessarily can't run cities, but they do have something to say about how things are run and how they're impacted by a lot of the decisions that we as adults make for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now in the media, I mean, you have the school shootings, right? That's a real big topic, but it's amazing to see all the students get together doing walkouts. They're collaborating. Yes. They're doing peaceful protesting. And then you see people, adults on television saying, oh, well, they don't know what they're talking about. They're just children.
Right.
Right?
Right.
But then some of the politicians have gotten in some really deep mess because it's become a bad PR campaign for them because they're not listening to the children.
Yeah. Did you want to say something? Okay. Yeah, that's so true. You know, with some of the recent shootings that happened, we did have a chance for our young people to meet with Congressman DeSaulnier and talk about that and talk about, how do we create more intentional spaces for young people to advocate for changes in the system, and how do we as adults, give them that space to do that. So.
Okay. Now, does the Ryse Center mainly deal with children and youth out of Richmond, or is it really all of West County or even parts of Alameda?
Yeah, it's Richmond and West County. Those are our main focuses. However, I mean, we've had young people from Alameda County come to us and come do different programs and things with us. We've had young people from East County, so still in Contra Costa County, come and do things with us. Sometimes transportation, transportation can be an issue, but the main young people at our center are Richmond, West County, but we have had young people from all over use our services.
Mm-hmm. What's been the most satisfying thing for you recently working at the Ryse Center?
There's so much. I think for me, it is really about allowing youth to write their stories, and however it's shown out. So whether it is doing like a PSA video, we had a red carpet event where our young folks worked for 6 months to a whole year on different projects, and they, we got to kind of show their films on the big screen, and they get to talk about their experiences of the different things they're talking about. And whether it's like poetry, whether it's video, whether it's painting a mural, just getting to see them really get to be or take ownership of their story, because a lot of times we are watching the news and we're watching all these things and we hear young folks saying, like, this isn't true. Like, what they're saying about us and what we're experiencing are two very different things. And so it's really getting them to say, like, I'm getting to tell my story, and I really want to put it out there. So whether it's like a spoken word event where it's a competition, or it's an open mic, they're still getting to tell their story, and they're getting to build community amongst other young folks and adults in the space. And it's honestly just a privilege to just sit and like watch them and listen to them talk. And because we have such an open door policy at Ryse, young folks will literally come, grab a chair, sit right next to your desk. It doesn't matter what work you're doing, but really just they feel that comfortable and that familial to come sit and just be like, yo, I need to talk to you. Like, I need to check in. And I feel like that is forming a relationship that I didn't have as a young person. And so I'm really grateful to give that to somebody and then also receive in the same way.
So you just mentioned something about they see stuff on the news and they're saying, wait a minute, that's not us, that's not Richmond. And Richmond's had a really negative attachment to it for so long.
Right.
I mean, at one point it was in the, I believe, top 10 like highest crime cities, but it hasn't been there for a long time now. And so I know but still to this day, a lot of people still have that negative feeling. And I use this example all the time. I told someone that I live in Richmond, and they're like, "Oh, you dodge bullets out there."
So
And that was just a few years ago that they actually said that. And no, that's not the case. So what is the youth going through right now in Richmond? What's it like? And then how when they come to the Ryse Center, how are they getting helped to deal with these various issues?
I mean, I think it's a mix. I think that what folks say about Richmond, it's split, right? Because we do experience gun violence. We are experiencing, just an array of different issues. But that doesn't mean that that's all Richmond is. And I think that that's what all of us are grappling with and struggling with. So when our young folks come in and say, like, I know that I love my city and I know that I'm not out here doing all of these things, but that's all that's being portrayed. So I think one is like, who's getting to tell these stories? And do they even live in the city? Are they from here? And, I think especially growing up here and, going to UC Santa Cruz, going all these places, people don't even step foot in Richmond before they say these types of things. But I think for our young folks, it's one, getting to outline, like, this is what I'm hearing from folks, that whether they're in the community or outside of the community, this is my experience, and that's, dealing with issues in the school, whether it's issues with the teachers, issues with other students and things like that, dealing with gun violence and things like that, bringing it into the space and having an open dialogue about, okay, how do we process this? Because I think growing up here, you don't learn how to actually deal with your trauma. It is very much like, okay, how can you kind of, put it in the back and keep pushing? Like, how can you ignore this? And that narrative of, like, you got to go to college to get out of this space, right? I think really exposing all of that and really being in dialogue about, like, you have other avenues, and it doesn't mean that you have to leave this place for you to experience better or for this to become better, which I think is really tied into, like, what does it mean to belong in Richmond? But I think after we get to dialogue, we get to create the art. We get to create whatever type of space they need in order to then share their stories, and really learn healthier ways to process, so that they can become who they need to be to take over these different structures and these different systems within Richmond.
Is a narrative or the idea that you have to go to college, does that seem to be like a lot of high pressure for the youth, to where they feel like, okay, it's either this or college, there's no in between, or there's no other options? I mean, does that seem like a lot of pressure to the youth right now?
I mean, I think because of Ryse, it's less like that, because we have in our education and justice department, we can get resume training. We can, people, like, we have staff that go to the interviews, that go buy the clothes for the interview, like, that are really supporting them so that they can see that there are other avenues. Like, you can go into a trade school, or you can go to college, or you can go straight into the workforce. So I feel like there's a less stress, but I know that growing up for me, especially being in a program like Making Waves, which was phenomenal, that was it. Like, you're going to school. And it's not a conversation. We start in 5th grade. You're going to college. And that's just what it was. So I think for me it was very hard, because I was like, okay, this isn't telling me how to fix where I come from. This is telling me that I have to leave in order to be better than where I come from. And that was the struggle. And I feel like young folks slightly feel that, but now they're getting to see and have access to these other avenues within their city.
One of the things, because, I brought up that we do have college access at Ryse. And so it's about how do we view, what's the framework for what college access looks like. And so when we talk about college access and talk about being college ready, it's not just about this young person is going to be going to XYZ university. It's about how are we preparing this young person to be college ready, and when it's time for them to decide what they want to do with their lives and what directions they want to go, they can choose whatever path they want to go in. So whether it's going to a 4-year, or like Cici said, whether it's going to a trade school, whether it's starting your own business, but it's about creating options and letting young people know that they have these options. And I think, that is a huge pressure for young people. It's kind of, you only have a couple of options that you can go down. And so what we're about is that, your options are unlimited. And so we want to be able to support you and provide ways for you to dream and think about, what all is out there. And so that's why we try to provide as many opportunities as possible so that young people are exposed to different things.
That's great, because if you don't know, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And if you grow up in a household that doesn't know either, because they probably grew up, nope, you go to college as soon as you get out, or that mentality of, no, you need to go to college because that's your way out, then, but I like the whole different mentality change. Why do I have to go? Why can't I just stay here, and here are my options, and here's what I can do with my life and what I want to do with my life, right? So it's just completely different mindset. And what you're doing is simply just giving them the tools and showing them, hey, there's a lot more options available out there instead of what you think are the only options.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the plans here that you have for the Ryse Center here.
Yes. This is Ryse Commons.
So when is this happening?
So Ryse Commons, it's in the process right now. Groundbreaking will likely happen 2019, early 2019. So it's really an amazing project, and just shows how much Ryse has grown, and shows how much young people are just involved in our process, because really all of Ryse Commons came from the minds of young people. Young people were included throughout the whole process of trying to figure out, what does Ryse Commons look like? What does it need? What doesn't it need? What are the programs that you would want to see there? And so it's really an expansion of what the Ryse Center is now, and just building on that and creating a space not just for young people, but also we're thinking like intergenerational too. And how are we bringing together all the generations in different types of spaces and programs, and creating space for our community partners too. A lot of folks you have families getting pushed out for numbers of reasons. You have partner organizations, so community-based organizations getting pushed out. And so this is really about thinking, how do you create sustainability in the community?
So I know you wanted to talk a little bit about displacement in Richmond. And so I would imagine it's extremely difficult to see displacement, especially when you're seeing the youths that are really enjoying the center, taking full advantage, and then have to go. What's that even like? And then how do you still keep them involved? Is there some kind of way you can still keep them involved if they are being displaced for whatever reason?
Yeah, there's actually one young person that's coming to mind right now, and we don't actually have an answer, but an example is this particular young person was participating in one of our internship programs and doing really well. And their family, they just couldn't afford to live out here anymore. And so they had to move. And even though we've been figuring out ways to make things work, it's still very rough. And so you have young people dealing with a lot of mature problems when they should potentially just be thinking about, what am I going to wear to school? Or what am I going to wear to homecoming? And they're dealing with all of this stuff. So we're seeing young people that have to go out and get jobs so they can help support their family and help pay for rent. And so they don't necessarily get to be a young person. They don't get to be a teenager. So we're seeing that constantly. And really, Ryse Commons is about taking all of that into account and figuring out, and this is just a piece, but how do we, as we have our role in the community, how are we supporting young people with that? And so
yeah, it's really complicated to think about. So like I said, I went to Santa Cruz, and when I graduated, I could not afford to live in Richmond. So I was commuting from Hayward for almost 3 years of trying to get back home. And like I said, I was at Ryse all the time because I was like, this is my community. This is where I feel at home. But I couldn't afford it. And so I think, and that's the experience of so many of my friends. My best friend moved to Sacramento 6 years ago because she was displaced. She couldn't afford it. And we grew up here. And it's really, I think to this day, it's mind-blowing that I cannot afford to live in the city that I grew up in. But then I see, all of these different new buildings popping up and all these things that are happening in Point Richmond. And it's very frustrating because we are trying to pull together all these resources to help young folks who are in the city, but it's a struggle to even find a place to lay your head at night. We have a lot of young folks who've experienced homelessness and still come to the center, and we try to support them as much as we can, but it's not an easy feeling at all, especially when you've experienced it yourself, but it's even more heartbreaking when you see younger and younger and younger folks dealing with the same thing. And like as Stephanie said, like they shouldn't even be thinking about stuff like that, but they are. I have a young person who just got her first job, and she's like, maybe I can help my mom with the rent so that I can stay here, and that's not okay.
And how old is she?
She's 16. Wow. So it's difficult. And even at that age, right, there's so many jobs that are not willing to hire young people just because, liabilities and things like that. You have to be at least 18 in a lot of places. So that puts another layer of stress on them that is way too advanced.
So where does the funding for Ryse come from?
Yeah, so we receive funding from the county. A lot of, like I said earlier, Ryse is really, our foundation is in community health and how are we providing those mental health as well as physical health supports for young people. And so we receive a lot of funding from the county. I won't say a lot, but we do receive funding from the county to support with that work. And that is one thing that is very great, that the county sees our integrative model and how we're working with young people from the preventative side to support them, or if they're already in it, to support them. And then we also receive funding from foundations. And so
personal donations.
And personal donations. And so we have a range of funding support. We could always use more support because it does take a lot to provide these resources for young people.
And all the different programs, too. I mean, you have so many programs there.
Yes. Yes. And, but we know we need it because it's just hard for young people out there. It's hard, like you were saying, a lot of the schools don't have those after school programs anymore. And so parents are looking for things for their young people to be in. Young people are looking for things to be in, and sometimes it's hard to find. Yeah,
it is. And then, so let's go back to the justice program. So, what are some of the programs involved there at the Ryse Center with the Justice Department?
So we offer a diversion program, and this particular program, it's an 8-week program. It works with young people that have had a first-time offense, and it works with them to not be formally processed in the system. So they don't have that stigma of being in the criminal system. They go through our 8-week program and they're getting life skills training. They're getting some of that college access training that we do. They're creating brag sheets, which is a resume. And they're getting all this support and, what it means to be a community member and how do you contribute to the community. And also looking at some of the things that are happening within the community that just aren't right. And how can you make an impact on that? How can you change those things? And so a lot of everything that we do is around not just telling young people like what to do or how to do something, but giving them that space to make some of the changes for themselves. So that's our diversion program. We also work with young people that have been in the system. So they may have been at the juvenile hall or they may have been at the boys ranch. And we work with those young people on transition and reentry back into the community. And that can be a range of supports from going to visit them while they're in, providing intentional and intensive case management supports for them, figuring out if they need housing supports, figuring out what support they need, getting re-enrolled back into school, figuring out if they need any type of mental health supports, but really walking with them throughout that whole process. And once they're released, having that mentor with them that is still going to be with them to just support them along the way. And then we also support young people if they have community service hours. So supporting them in getting those community service hours completed.
Very neat.
Yeah. And part of that is also really those young people that have been impacted by the system, giving them a voice. And so as I talked about a little bit earlier, there's a lot of opportunities around advocacy around the criminal justice system. And we really look at young people as a whole as experts. And so if you've gone through something, if you've been impacted by the system, you're an expert in how to advocate for changes. And so we want to provide them with the tools to go up to Sacramento to advocate for different things, or to go down to the county and go to a board of supervisors meeting to advocate for different things. Mm-hmm. And so we also want to provide those opportunities for them.
Yeah, because there's a lot of flaws in the criminal system right now.
Just a couple.
Just a couple, right? Yeah, and I mean, if you just look at marijuana right now, mm-hmm. It's legal here in the state, yet you still have some people locked up because they were caught with marijuana at a time when it was illegal, mm-hmm. right? And they didn't have a medicinal card, whatever the case was. So, yeah, I mean, you just have a lot of different issues. And so to show them how they can actually go make a difference, especially when they've had some kind of firsthand experience with the criminal mm-hmm. system, that's really important.
Yes. And it's amazing to see how empowered young people are when they're given the opportunity to do different things that they necessarily wouldn't have thought that they would be doing.
Very interesting. Mm-hmm. Art department. What are the various programs there? What's your favorite program to work with in the art department?
That's a really hard question. I mean, there are so many programs. I think my favorite would have to be kind of a compilation. So we do, this is our first time doing a showcase, but every year we do an annual projection. Multimedia, it's massive. Last year we did a play called Richmond Renaissance, which was huge, but we had young folks in Richmond and staff put together this entire production, Richmond Renaissance, which was 1940s North Richmond. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing because we got to take young folks who maybe don't get to go into North Richmond for whatever reason, and they got to interview folks in the community about their experiences growing up in Richmond, and then that got turned into the script. And it was just a phenomenal production, sold out both nights, and it was just a lot of fun. So I think this time around we're scaling back where we're doing a showcase, which encompasses kind of all of what we get to do in the art program. So we have a young person who's working on his film, which is about love and relationships and how complicated it is. And so it's always interesting to hear young folks talk about, well, what do you think love is? Because most of the time they're not going to tell you, right? It's like, I don't even want to say love in this building. So to have him put together an entire 10-minute film on like what he thinks about relationships and things like that and talking to adults has been an amazing experience. We have 4 poets working on a group piece around, what is love? How do you even talk about it? Love and healing. Is that, how are they connected? Is it possible? Love and pain, how are they connected? And a lot of young folks feel like you don't feel pain without also feeling love, and it's vice versa. So really getting to hear that, and then manifestation of love, what's kind of the ongoing process and how do we move forward. So that's coming up August 3rd and 4th, and that has been taking over my brain, but it's great because it's poetry, it's praise dancing. It's like the first time we've ever got to have our young folks bring in praise dance and also really the spiritual element. We're going to be stepping, which is going to be exhausting, but a lot of fun. We have a young person working on a phenomenal mural inspired by Tefiti, which is from Moana, I believe, and so really talking about love in that aspect. So this is a really great production and showcase because we get to take all of the elements of art and young folks making beats in the studio. There's a built-in studio. So,
wow.
And we had a young person actually teaching a beat making workshop. And so really bringing in those elements. And when young folks produce a beat and that it's used in a show, then they actually get paid for those beats.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah. And so I'm just, that's where my brain is going because I'm like, well, that encompasses everything. And I'm just super excited to see our young folks show out.
What programs do you plan to expand when this new Ryse Commons gets built?
Oh my gosh. Well, all of them. All of them. I mean, I think it creates a really good opportunity to look at some of our programs in a different way and figure out, what can we revamp in some ways and what can we expand. I mean, some of the things that we're thinking are social enterprise. So how are we creating space for, I know, it's these kind of little things right here, which are, I think, what do you call it? The containers.
What are they?
The things that are on trains. Those shipping containers? That's what they're called.
Okay.
Yes. So using those as pop-up shops for young people. So expanding what social enterprise and entrepreneurship looks like for young people.
You can do a lot with those because they're building homes right now out of shipping
homes.
Containers.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So looking at that. So, we've been doing things around how can we create entrepreneurial classes for young people and things like that. But we're running out of space too to do different things. And so this will help to expand some of those dreams that we have. Creating a education and innovation center, which is really going to focus on education and how we're looking at education, how we're building in tech to what we do at Ryse and how we're teaching young people tech. So there's so many things. There'll be a new dance studio. There'll be...
So when you say tech, are you teaching coding also?
Yeah, so right now, yes.
Wow, you really do everything.
So we partner with the Hidden Genius Project. They run a 15-month intensive program for young Black males. And so we've been looking at, as we expand with Ryse Commons, how do we even expand that partnership and what that looks like? So, yeah, we do a little bit of everything.
Are there other Ryse centers in the Bay Area or throughout California? This the only one?
This is the one and only. The one and only. And one of the things that I did want to bring up too, Cici touched a little bit on the showcase, and we do these community events where we do invite the community to things to experience Ryse. And the Lead with Love showcase that's happening August 3rd and 4th is a great opportunity to kind of see what all of our young people are doing at Ryse. They're creating this geodome, which looks like a little igloo, and they're going to be showing different films in that. And you really get to travel around the center in an interactive way and hear and see and feel what the young people are doing. And so I would encourage everyone to go to our website, rysecenter.org. And
What about social media?
Social media too. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. And get the Lead with Love tickets, because it's going to be an amazing event. Also, we have our Night Out for Safety and Liberation that's coming up on August 7th, which is also open to the community. And that's really getting the community to think about what does safety mean to our community, and changing the narrative of what safety is. And so there'll be some interactive things where people can do their own art and talk about what safety is. They can do things on social media. They can participate in smoothie making, or participate in different things around food justice, economic justice, environmental justice. And so it's a great opportunity to interact with the staff and young people at Ryse and other community members. And it's Ryse's open house. And so you can tour the space and find out a little bit more about what Ryse is and who we support and all the good things that we do.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are there plans? Do you collaborate with other different centers that might do something similar for youths?
Not necessarily collaborate in a way like we're always doing things together, but we do have partners that we work with on various projects. So for instance, like East Bay Center for the Performing Arts, we partner with them on different things, work with them on different things. And other youth serving agencies, we've worked with them. There's some folks in like Oakland, Youth Speaks, Youth Radio, that we'll work with on different things and collaborate for different projects.
Now, what's the age range as far as the youths?
13 to 21 is our age range. Sometimes it's a little bit over, depending on what program. So sometimes we can go to 24, 26-year-olds. We also do a hospital link-based program that is supporting young people that have experienced lethal injury. And so sometimes that's in like the 24, 26-year-old range.
Now, do you see a lot of the youth that age out come back and help out the current youth?
Yeah, so I think about a third of our staff are former members.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
A third of our staff. A lot of the MAC staff are former members. I actually just hired our new college access coordinator that just graduated from UC Santa Cruz. He's a former member and a former Ryse leader.
So a college
member.
access coordinator?
Mm-hmm.
So he would be in charge of putting the youth or connecting them to different colleges?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, connecting them to different colleges, exposing them to different colleges, doing our college tours, helping them with personal statements. Yeah, everything having to do with college.
Yeah, wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. Yeah, I wish there were more centers like that.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, we have a leadership pipeline, and it's so true. Like I said, a third of our staff are former members. And so we're always looking at how do we create pathways for the young people that are coming up through Ryse to either come back or work with us in some capacity, whether it's actually coming on as staff or we've even contracted former members out as filmmakers for different things. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So excited for you guys.
Thank you.
And congratulations on this. I assume it's already approved.
Plans
already moving forward.
Yes.
It's
Plans
awesome.
are moving.
How many square feet is this going to be? Do you know?
It is, Cici was just looking at
I know,
this.
it's huge.
So, what? 19,000? No, that's
That's
the
just
outdoor space is 19,240 square feet.
10,000.
Yeah,
Almost
the
11,000
new construction. Yeah,
Wow.
almost 11,000.
It's going to be an amazing center. And
Mm-hmm.
if you can send me photos, I'll get this up on Facebook. And,
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
We can also send you a video too.
Yeah.
Of
send
like
me the
kind of
video.
walking through.
Yep.
Yeah,
the
send me the
center.
video. This is really cool. This is going to be amazing to see once it's all finished and built.
Yes.
So Cici, Stephanie, thanks for coming out onto the podcast.
Thanks for having us. This was fun.
Definitely.
Yeah. And good luck with the Ryse Center.
Thank
and
you.
everything you're doing.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubin. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at marcguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.